All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury. I'm joined now by Port of Seattle Commissioner Ryan Calkins, right?
Good morning, Omari.
How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm great.
Okay,
really
good.
pleased to be on.
Yeah, and thanks for coming down to the studio.
Yeah, you bet. It's really nice to be in person. This is one of my first sort of, we're still socially distant, I guess, but it's good to be able to talk fully maxed off. It's great.
You see the viewers can't see it, but we got the tape on the floor. It's all taped off here, proper distance and everything else. All right, so let me put the formalities to the side. Welcome, glad to have you here and everything else. I'm gonna just be very honest with you, Commissioner, and very sincere. I'm tired of politicians and aspiring politicians, because I'm Black, coming on this show and using this DEI word soup of diversity and equity and inclusion and everything else, and they never get to dollars and cents and strategy and anything else. So I'm real with you right now. If you're not prepared to talk real information about this port, real dollars, real cents, total tonnage, import, export, we might as well wrap this up early and go to commercial break.
I'm ready to go. It was really refreshing to hear that we get to talk about the port itself, and I don't have to come on with a bunch of prepared talking points that are supposed to make you feel good, but instead we can talk about what a huge, important entity this is for the public. This is a key publicly owned asset for our region, and it doesn't matter where you're coming from. It's really important for all of us, and so I'm excited to talk about the port.
All right. Well, we're going to put you up to it because, like I said, our audience wants to be informed and educated and not hit with all this word soup of whatever and smoke screen. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You're elected. We want to hold you accountable.
Good.
First of all, what's in dollars and cents? How much business? I know COVID impacted some things clearly, and maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way. Man, how much money does this port generate?
So if you think about it in terms of our budget, we're about a $2 billion a year budget. So $1 billion goes to operations, running the existing facilities, about $1 billion for capital budget, which is what are we building or refurbishing each year? And it's really important to think about it that way because, a capital budget, that's going to vacillate in certain times. But right now we're at a real inflection point for the port where we've got a lot of facilities that are 50, 60 years old. They need to be invested in, and we've chosen to invest. That means jobs in construction. It means new opportunities for represented work, union work at our facilities. And I think it's important for folks to know what the port is. It is a publicly owned agency established in 1911. There's 5 elected officials, 5 of us port commissioners elected by all the people in King County. So it doesn't matter if you live in Maple Valley or Carnation or downtown Seattle, you get a vote on every race at the Port Commission. And then we sit at the top of the Port Commission organizational chart. We essentially hire the executive and his leadership team. And then we're in charge of SeaTac Airport, the marine terminals, and then some other properties around the Seattle area that help to support the port ecosystem.
Right. And so in that case, it's almost like a structure, almost kind of like there's the what's the person called then who runs the port? Is that the port director?
Yeah, the person who answers to us, the commission, is the executive director.
So the executive director, so the commissioners hire the executive director.
Yeah, it's not like the city where you have a mayor who's kind of a co-equal with a council. At the port, there's 5 of us. So we're both sort of like the council and the mayor all together.
It's almost like the school board.
Yeah, a little bit like that, only we're...
Where you have the directors, and the directors then get the superintendent, and the superintendent's job is to manage the everyday operations.
That's right. The difference is, and this is something I've shared with my school board director friends, that we have the advantage of being, it's a job where I'm paid to do this. It's part-time.
School board don't get no money, man.
Exactly.
All they get is a stipend.
I always tell them that's the worst job in Seattle politics.
They got $1 billion budget, and the school board directors get a stipend for 12 months for $4,000. So I'm glad you're getting paid.
No, and honestly, I feel like they're in the worst of both worlds. They've got huge responsibility, but they don't get paid to do it, and they don't have a staff to support them. We at the commission, we get paid and we have staff so that we can create our own priorities, set our own goals, do our own data gathering. And that way we're not sort of, it allows us to counterbalance against the staff, which, we need to work in the interest of the public.
Mm-hmm. How big is the port in Seattle compared to nationally and even internationally?
So SeaTac Airport is the 8th largest passenger airport in the United States. We are also one of the largest cargo airports in the United States. And it's important to recognize we have cargo planes that come and go, but about half of all the cargo through SeaTac is in the belly of the plane that you're flying in when you fly down to LA or wherever else. And then at the seaport, we're the part of the fourth largest gateway in the United States. So we, 5 years ago, signed an agreement with the Port of Tacoma to do everything together on international cargo. And together, we're the fourth largest after only 3 other ports in the country: Savannah, New York, and LA. So we're big.
Savannah, huh?
Yeah, it's a huge port.
You know, all the times I've been there, I never went down to the port. I wouldn't imagine that port was that big. And, you know, a lot of times people look out and you see these big ships out there and you see these containers and put the curveball on you, man. How many containers come in and how many containers go out in general figure?
Good question. So we're at about 1.5 million what are called TEUs, which is just sort of lingo for containers. It's the 20 equivalent unit containers that you see on the backs of trucks. Tacoma is about the same. So together we're about 3 million containers per year. We're a pretty balanced port. We have almost the same number of containers exporting as we do importing. And that's really important. The state of Washington is a big agricultural state. We also are the port of North Dakota. We're the port of Chicago. Montana, so in a lot of ways, if you're buying something from China or you're selling something to China, it's going to come through the port of Seattle.
There you go. And see, these are the kind of things that, man, I want to talk about even more, because the Black community, man, we just end up on the consumer side of the port. You know, there's other communities that really understand how ports work. And I only bring that up, you know, in previously in my career, you know, I was fortunate enough to work with a few different companies, and it was out there in the port of Rotterdam, which is a real big port, especially like for spirits, beer, things like that. You know, Moet Hennessy, Diageo, Heineken, everything's come out of there. I worked in a marketing capacity with Heineken and Moet Hennessy. And you see a lot of stuff that comes out of Rotterdam. You knew it was fake if the origination was from, you know, from another country. But also, you know, I've been traveling back and forth through Dubai for 15 years, but I lived there for 4 years. And that port in Dubai, really big because a lot of African traders, you fly over to Dubai, you buy all the stuff either for your shop or for other shops that, you know, are a wholesaler. They put it on the boat there in Dubai and you float it over to the port, maybe in Mombasa, Kenya, or into Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, or Maputo, Mozambique. And so me personally, from the big side to developing countryside, I was seeing how ports generate, you know, the potential to generate revenue and everything else. I'll stop right there and I'll throw it back to you because you said that this port is very balanced as far as, you know, what comes in and what goes out. What is going out of the state of Washington to the rest of the world, and what are some of the primary countries that it's going to?
So state of Washington, obviously, we're famous for our airplanes, right? Boeing started here. Has
number one exporter in the world.
Yeah. And so as a result, the state of Washington has a huge export surplus, meaning the total value of goods that we export is larger than what we import. But if you take airplanes out of that, all of a sudden we get imbalanced the other way. And so that's a huge part of it. But we're also a major export for agricultural goods. And, you know, it's everything from soy and French fries and corn from the Midwest. All those things are coming through our port. In fact, we're the largest, what's called reefer port, which means refrigerated cargo port.
That reefer.
Yeah, that reefer.
Grab Brock's eyes got kind of big. Like, what? They're exporting all the weed.
You know, we don't track that, but we might also be the other kind of most prominent.
Definitely.
But yeah, so we've got, we're set up to manage a ton of refrigerated cargo because so much of what we export is agricultural. And it's not just the traditional agriculture you think of, but also other food products like our seafood. We have some of the best seafood in the world, and we're the home port for the Alaska fishing fleet. So those ships, they go up, they fish, they come back, they process it here, freeze it, and then we ship it out to everywhere, basically.
So some of the things that leave this port here are agriculture, from not only from our state, but from the Inland Empire, and then also seafood. Are we exporting anything else? You know, major we have, textiles?
Yeah, absolutely. We have really high value manufactured goods related to electronics, other parts. And then of course we have wood products that we export as well. So, you know, we're still a lumber town in some way.
Right. And so certain industries definitely understand the importance of this port. If you're a farmer, you're keeping an eye out on what's happening over there at the port of Seattle, what's going on. If you're making finished goods, You know, furniture, definitely. If you're a fisherman, you know, or in that business, then you're keeping an eye there on the port. And so what are some of the top countries? I mean, I'm sure everybody's going to say China, but beyond China, what are some of the other top countries that import into the Port of Seattle?
Meaning that where we receive goods
from?
Yeah,
we're receiving goods.
So, yeah, absolutely. China's at the top. It's a significant part of it. We're also really prominent with Vietnam and increasing.
What's coming in from Vietnam?
Same kind of commodities. So Vietnam is beginning to outcompete China in manufactured goods. And so their costs are a little bit lower than Chinese. So when Donald Trump was in power, he was creating all sorts of barriers to China. And so some manufacturers moved capacity to Vietnam. We're really trying to reach out to India right now. And not only is India a huge population center, we want to have trade with them, but it's also culturally an area where there's a large population of Indian Americans who, whose families originated from India, and so we're beginning to see that there's an opportunity for collaboration there as well.
Yeah. What about East Africa, especially like Ethiopia, Eritrea? There's a big population that's here. That's actually multi-generational. At this point, it looks like everything's all good with Eritrea and Ethiopia. So that means the port in Asmara, you know what I'm saying, it's back open for business, maybe for Ethiopian goods. I mean, it's just a big community. The community is here. And I used to be, listen, back in I did it. And hopefully what's it called? The time lapses where someone can charge you with a crime.
Oh, the statute of limitations.
Hopefully statute of limitations now, because this was a long time.
You're going to confess to something on air.
I used to do import export, but like the big thing back in the day, this is small stuff though, is just like the Victoria's Secret body sprays. You wouldn't believe back in the day, you buy them here for $5 and they'd sell. Like David's out there laughing. They'd sell as soon as I landed in Dar es Salaam for like $40, $50 a bottle, man. That's how I paid for it. That's
called arbitrage. That's a good, I think that's perfectly legal. I don't know.
I was transshipped. Like, I believe me. I know moving goods. But at one point too, I had a business with my girlfriend at the time, and she was selling like hair and hair products. And we were in Abu Dhabi. And so we would get stuff shipped in from China to Abu Dhabi, and then on the Qatar jet or Emirates jet, go down from Abu Dhabi down to Tanzania, resell, bid, you know what I'm saying? Like international resell. But when you see it, you see people visualizing global trade. You know what I'm saying? Some industries here, people just grew up in global trade and they don't think twice about it. Maybe the average fisherman, they know like, oh, this lobster might end up somewhere. Generationally, as a farmer here in the agricultural business, your dad was a farmer, your grandparents were farmers. You get your potatoes to market, the potatoes end up somewhere else in the world. People here who are in the technology business, and a lot of technology you already know, there's a global marketplace. I think there's a lot of communities here, though, who never really interacted with this port and understand the power and the potential of the port. And so you're talking to people right now in our community who, like I said, are always on the consumer side. They're the people who buy, at once that container lands and it's ended and it's gone to the wholesaler, the middleman, and then finally the retailer is when our community is involved in that. And we're not exporting much either. But maybe you can talk more about, man, what are opportunities at the port, and whether opportunities, you can start with the stuff that all the politicians come in and talk about jobs, so you can do this and that. But what are some of the other opportunities that maybe people in our community aren't looking at?
I think that's a great question, Omari. So when I first started at the Port of Seattle, I had experience as an importer myself. I owned a small business in Georgetown, and we were importing. So I had a little bit of an understanding of what the trade was like. But it became really clear that there were a whole host of people who had no idea of the impact of the port and the economic opportunity that the port represented. We employ about 2,000 people at the Port of Seattle, but more important than that, are on the maritime side, there are 60,000 jobs related to maritime in the greater Seattle area. And the average wage is nearing 6 figures at this point. That's great work. And it's really stable and it's future proof, meaning it's not going to get outsourced. It's not going to get automated. These are jobs that are going to stick around. So they are family wage careers. The problem is they're legacy careers. How do people find that job? Their uncle was a fisherman, or their dad was a pilot, or some friend or neighbor knew about opportunities in maritime or aviation. So we started thinking about, how do we connect students? And I was talking to a good friend in education, and she said to me, if kids can't see it, they can't be it. And so we need to get out in front of kids early. We got to get them awareness building in elementary school. We got to get them hands-on in middle school. And we got to get them really solid training in high school so that by the time they graduate, they have a choice. They can say, I want to go into maritime or aviation. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a longshore worker. I want to be a fisherman. I want to be a naval architect or whatever it might be. But if you don't even know that those are available, you're never going to pursue that. And so the big project that I undertook 2 years ago was to start a maritime high school. I saw that we had great opportunities for field trips, like going down to the aquarium, starting to get a sense of that. But there was this gap between middle school and college or post high school, where we weren't doing a whole lot of career awareness building and education. And so this fall, we're going to start a maritime high school in South Seattle, working with Highland Public Schools, similar to Aviation High School, but with a maritime focus. And the goal is to get kids ready for the trades, 2-year and 4-year education after high school, so they can go right into these maritime careers.
Man, that's nice.
It is.
You know, I mean, it's interesting too to hear you say that, and it's interesting to hear the intentionality of it, because it's like, you know, on the flip side, where I was a part of a program there in the Central District, is that it's something similar where our kids who do, you know, go on to college, they're usually getting like, you know, outdated advice. Get a criminal justice degree, get a teaching degree. You can't live on that here in Seattle. And so the thing is exposing young people early on to these career paths that they actually earn a wage, and they graduate, they could afford to come back and live in Seattle, buy their mama a house or something. Because, you know, a lot of times the career trajectory that our kids are taking, they don't pay well. And a lot of times they're taking that trajectory because that's easily what's in front of them, what their uncle told them to do, this is a good idea or whatever, and they're not being exposed to these areas of where, you know what I'm saying, it's good, stable jobs and incomes. So, you know, we're going to be following up with you on this.
Good.
You know what I'm
well,
saying?
And I let me just put it out there. If you're in 8th grade right now, or you have an 8th grade child or niece or nephew who's interested in this, we still have a few spots open for the inaugural class of Maritime High School. Each year, we're going to add new. So this year, we're starting with about 50 spots. Next year, it'll move up to about 100 spots. We're going to have it's a full comprehensive high school, about 100 students per year. And it is going to be a better high school experience, because we're not just getting the standard funding for it. We're going out and we're saying to everybody who's looking for workers, you ought to be helping to train the next generation. So we're going to the Washington State ferries. We're going to the shipyards. We're going to the electrical engineers and everybody involved in maritime, and saying, we want you to chip in and make sure that these kids are getting a up-to-date education on what you need to do to be a maritime worker, whether you're going to go straight into a union apprenticeship program or you're going to go to MIT to become an engineer. This is going to be a premier education for those kids. So think about every time you see one of those ferries, the workers on those ferries are making great wages. But how do you even start to become a ferry worker? Do you know anybody who can tell you that?
Yeah, and I will say this: they've come a little ways. I won't say long ways, but yeah, believe me, Black people try to get in on the ferries, you know, through the direct route, and they were locked out of it. But I get what you're saying, that it's like a lot of these jobs and industries are very locked in, you know.
So what if we caught a kid at 14, 15 years old,
right,
so that by the time they graduate from high school, they already have the certifications they need to start that apprenticeship program? It'd be a huge head start.
Yeah, that also opens them up though too. A lot of those certifications, man, yeah, it's here for Seattle, Washington State. A lot of them are international as well. Yep. And so it opens you up to really be, you know, working in international space. Excuse me, man. We've this has been a good conversation. And hopefully, let me check in the comments here. Well, nobody's telling me to kick you off yet, so that means you haven't offended anybody. But not, I think that I mean, really, this is what I want to do for my community. Is the best thing that I can do for my community with this platform is educate them. You know what I'm saying? And I know your commissioners are up. There's elections coming and all this kind of stuff. I'm not telling them who to vote. That's not my job. But my job is to be able to put commissioners like yourself and people running for office in a position, man, to speak in an educated manner to the audience. And man, I really appreciate the fact that you didn't come in here, like I said, with this DEI words soup and smoke screen for my viewers and talk about, kumbaya and hug it out. Man, we got to keep things on topic. We got to talk about the dollars and the cents and policy discussion. And unfortunately, in this city, no one has policy discussions anymore. It's just hyperbolic name calling and finger pointing. And people get away from the actual policy. People get away from all of these kind of things that are actually important that our viewers could benefit. Two things. I want to have all these people are having these forums for City Hall and mayor, and they want Converge to get involved. I don't know about that, but I definitely want a port forum, because when I go to my neighborhood
name the time and place. I'd love to be there.
So many people are like, I didn't know about the port. And so yeah, there's my question. You're in?
I'm in.
Put a forum together?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll do that. And before we let you go ahead and look at that camera right there. You can tell people how they can keep up with you, what you're doing, everything else.
For sure. So you can go onto my website at ryanforport.com. As Omari mentioned, 3 of us are up for re-election this year. I'd love your support for that re-election campaign. This is a job that I truly love. And, as Omari mentioned, this role is not just about talking points. It's really about making sure that one of our most important public assets, the port, both the airport, the seaport, is functioning for our public. We want to make sure that you have a clean, safe, and stress-free experience when you go to SeaTac. And we also want to make sure that when you're expecting food on your table or packages on your doorstep that are coming through the Port of Seattle, that they get there in a timely manner. So I think it's critically important. We don't spend a lot of time talking about it in public, but absolutely. So I'd love your support. ryanforport.com.
All right, Commissioner.
Thank you, Omari. This was fun. Please have me on again. I'd love to keep talking port stuff.
Yeah, no, man, hey, believe me, because in some of my port stories I can't even say on air. So maybe someone actually might come looking for me. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, Bay Holiday returns to the set. You're watching the Morning Update Show.